Good morning. So glad to have you here today for Diversity Forum 2020, a virtual experience. My name is Dr. Cheryl Gittens, and I am the Interim Deputy Vice Chancellor for Diversity and Inclusion and Chief Diversity Officer for the UW-Madison. I want to thank you for attending our session entitled Her Story, Voices from Women Students of Color Pursuing Careers in STEM Fields. I want to set the context of this session with the premise that promoting diversity in STEM facilitates both excellence and innovation. Scientific discovery requires the talent, perspectives, and insight that can only be assured by increasing diversity in the science, engineering, and technological workforce. Women of color in STEM comprise only 5% of the STEM workforce and are historically underrepresented in STEM majors on college campuses. Why is this? How can we address this? For the sake of innovation and excellence, we must understand how to increase representation in STEM. Over the past 3 years, a team of women across UW's campus convened to address issues impacting women in STEM, including students and faculty at all levels. The group participated in the Big Ten Academic Alliance to Advance Women in STEM and determined to better understand the unique challenges and opportunities at UW-Madison specifically. A little over a year ago, members of the group traveled to Rutgers University to attend the Big Ten Summit to explore issues impacting women in STEM. One of the most impactful sessions at the summit was listening to a panel of undergraduate women students. Their stories were transformative, inspiring, and seeded many ideas to bolster enrollment and retention of women students of color in our STEM disciplines. The UW team felt that hearing directly from students would be valuable for people around campus to advance women of color in STEM. So here, I want to acknowledge those women who helped to develop the proposal for today's session and are really doing things across campus to impact change. So I want to thank and acknowledge Suzanne Swift, who is the former head of the Women in Science and Engineering Learning Community, now with the School of Computer Data and Information Sciences. Karen Wasserman, Cal's Associate Dean of Academic Affairs and Professor of Bacteriology. Gloria Maribifa, Letters and Sciences Associate Dean of Natural, Physical, and Mathematical Sciences and Professor of Math. Manuela Romero, Associate Dean for Undergraduate Affairs in the College of Engineering. Jennifer Sheridan, Executive and Research Director of Wisely, the Women in Science and Engineering Leadership Institute. Steve Kramer, the former Vice Provost of Teaching and Learning. And Fua Holt, the Program Assistant in the Office of the Provost. Now I want to introduce you to our moderator, Dr. Desiree Bates. I first became acquainted with Dr. Bates on paper. In the document, there was a presentation of outstanding efforts within the chemistry department to foster greater access and success for students who are members of historically underrepresented populations, including African Americans, Native Americans, Latinos, Hispanics, Asian Americans, and Southeast Asians, first-generation college students, and economically disadvantaged. The document lauded numerous initiatives designed to increase representation within chemistry's graduate program, such as research experience for undergraduates, CHOPS, Chemistry Opportunities Program, the Catalyst Program, and the Chemistry Bridge to the Doctorate Program, just to name a few. These initiatives are helping to increase the numbers of underrepresented students in its graduate program and the success of those students in earning PhDs. As I read about these initiatives, I learned that Dr. Bates had her hands in many of these efforts. I was impressed and I couldn't wait to meet her. And I was happy to see her work promoted on stage and recognized by the UW System Regents Diversity Award. So I couldn't think of a better person to help me facilitate this panel of excellent women of color on our campus. And without further ado, I want to pass over the microphone to Dr. Bates. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for that warm welcome, Cheryl. I appreciate it. I am a woman in STEM, a woman of color in STEM. I grew up in Wisconsin. I was adopted at a very young age into a white family. I was grateful to be nurtured in STEM because my father is a chemist. And from a young age, I was always interested in investigating and learning more about everything. And I still am that way. But there were hurdles, and there was opportunities that I missed or felt like not being included or not welcoming. And I think a panel like this would have been very helpful to know that I belong and that I was valued, and that change, there were real issues that we can acknowledge and then take the next step to change those issues. And address them and fix it so we can have a more equitable system so that everybody who wants education can get it. Therefore, I'm very excited to hear from these women. I would like to start by saying that the panelists have the right to decline any personal questions that maybe they are not comfortable with answering, just out of respect. We also want to think of this panel as a way for the university and the system to grow. And what I mean by that is it's not a tips and tricks panel. It's not a way to fix minorities or fix people of color so that they can navigate the system. Instead, it's a way to learn how the system is broken and fix it. And therefore, everyone can be successful and get education. I am very excited to help and to learn myself because I think these types of initiatives need to always be dynamic and change. So just as we do one year doesn't mean that the same issues affect the new generation of students. And so it's a continuous effort to keep making sure that we're creating these equitable means for whoever our current population and community is. I want our fellow women in STEM to know that they are welcome, they are valued, and there are people here that are so excited to hear from you and so excited to learn how we all can be allies and advocate for one another and change the system so that everyone has access to education and can get to the dreams that they want and change the world. So without going further, I would like each of the panelists to introduce themselves and to talk a little bit and give us a little information about background about themselves. So we'll start with Alex, and we'll start there.
Hi, I'm Alexandra Valencia Villa. I am a third-year graduate student, but first-year PhD student in the geoscience department. So I actually just defended my Master's of Science this summer. So now I'm a PhD student, staying in the program. Thank you. I didn't really see myself as a scientist, honestly, until I defended my master's. And it was because I didn't know I could be a scientist growing up. I didn't even know I was going to go to college. I'm a first-generation student, Latina. My parents didn't go to college. It was never really emphasized. So it was kind of like a miracle that I got into undergrad, and then I got into grad school, and I had mentors that supported me to get to that point. And I really, I enjoyed being a part of these groups because I want everyone to grow up with the thought that they can be anything, and that being a scientist isn't specific to a certain group or race or ethnicity. So that's why I'm really proud to be here today.
All right, Angelica, do you want to go next?
Sure thing. So my name is Angelica Lopez. I'm a third-year biomedical engineering student. And I think for me, at a young age, I was always kind of interested in science. My parents weren't overly fond when I told them that I wanted to build a lab right underneath their bedroom in our family room, growing up, especially since I told them it would involve mice. So they kind of knew from a young age that I wanted to be a scientist or an engineer in that sense. And as I've continued through my undergraduate career, I've continued to be involved in research, and that has solidified further that I want to continue on to do research and get a PhD. So yeah, it's just, I'm happy that I've had the opportunities to get this far and had the support to pursue a STEM degree even as a Latina. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, Valerie, do you want to go next?
Yeah, hi. So my name is Bela, and my preferred pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a first-year student in the MPH program at UW-SMPH, and I also grew up in Wisconsin. So I grew up in central Wisconsin, specifically Marshfield, Wisconsin, and did my undergrad here at UW-Madison. I earned a bachelor's degree in biology with biocore and global health as certificates. But I think the main thing that made me realize that I am a scientist, not just a girl that likes science, the subject of science, is being involved in research. So really getting opportunities from amazing mentors and women of color, and having my mother who did not get to have an education that she wanted, and her urging me to pursue what I wanted to do. That really made me feel like I was asking my own questions, doing my own research, going through that process of science. So, and now I am in my Master's of Public Health. I am more, my research interests involve, I'm still deciding what I want to specifically delve into, but they involve maternal and child health, access to healthcare, and as well as working with either low socioeconomic or historically disadvantaged populations to work towards health equity as a whole.
Thank you for sharing. Erin, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Erin Jenkins, and I'm a junior here on campus studying microbiology and environmental studies. I apologize, you have to bear with me. I moved out of my personal space to get a more quiet space for the panel, but of course that means I have to mask up. I'm certainly willing to do that to ensure we maintain a safe environment. When asked, when I first thought I was a scientist, it would have to be like when I was 8 and I was looking through the big Toys R Us magazine, and the main thing that I circled was the microscope. And that's what I asked for Christmas, and that's what I got. And I just remember spending a lot of time going around the house collecting samples and outside collecting samples and really looking at them. Of course, it wasn't the greatest quality, but the idea of collecting it, looking into it, and just learning more about things really set off that, scientific process to know that I, could certainly pursue my dreams and learn more about the world around me.
Thank you. Jasmine, would you like to introduce yourself now?
Of course. So, hello everyone. My name is Jasmine Washington. I am a senior in chemical engineering, also pursuing a certificate in international engineering. I knew I was very interested in STEM from a young age because me and my family went out to dinner a lot. This is my favorite story to tell. We went out to dinner a lot, and I was always that kid that was just playing in her food and just doing the most. So one day I would always mix up all my food and give it to my dad and be like, hey, this is going to turn you purple, or hey, this is going to cure your back pain. And then after doing that so many times, he was like, hey, well, there's actually people who do this. They're called chemists. And I was like, huh, that's cool. And then through continued support as I grew up through middle school and high school, I just learned more about engineering, learned more about chemistry, and that's how I ultimately decided on chemical engineering. And that's mainly due to the point of really great support by my family, as well as really great mentors throughout my life, and being able to talk to people about what I could determine I liked and disliked. And I think something I'm really big on now and really big on campus is mentorship and being able to try to pay that forward. I really love working with grades K through 12 and showing them that STEM is an option for them, is a career for them, and just giving that support back like it was for me. So that's huge with me.
Thank you. I completely agree. I completely am grateful for the people that helped me get to where I am, and I want to give that back to people too. So thank you. Who would like to go next? Buka, do you want to go?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Olubukala Leonard. I go by Bookie, and I am originally from Prince George's County, Maryland. I grew up in the Washington, D.C., PG County area. I received my bachelor's in electrical engineering from the Howard University. Started graduate school here in electrical engineering also with the thoughts of continuing my PhD in electrical engineering, and learned that I was more interested in some other stuff. So I switched over to curriculum and instruction, math education. So that's what I'm pursuing my PhD in. I knew I was interested in science and being in engineering and math from a very young age. My dad was a teacher in DC public schools, so he had access to a lot of out of school kind of programming, and he would put us in there because he usually had to teach. So, and also being the children of Nigerian immigrants, we had to stay busy. So I did something called Saturday Academy at UDC, and I was in second or third grade, I think, and we worked on logic stuff. Like, it was high level things, but they were giving it to DC public students in the form of introducing them to STEM. And I loved it. I already loved math. I was already, because I didn't like reading for fun. I mean, for school, I liked reading for fun. And I just took to it. So I knew from a very young age, I wanted to do something where I got to work with circuits, with logic statements, numbers, et cetera, et cetera. Years later, more programs later, so out of school program, summer program at Howard during the summer, I then learned to focus in on electrical engineering, and here I am today. Very interested in understanding the social spaces that we create for women of color, for Black girls, because I think that is more crucial for keeping women in STEM. The academics part, it's there. We have the classes, they're going to do it, but there's a lot of social things that we don't tack into, that we don't address, that we don't talk about, that push students away, that push women of color away, that push Black women, Latinx women, first gen, that keep them from staying in these spaces. And that is what I'm interested in studying. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. That is a really insightful idea, is creating safe spaces for everyone in different cultures to be successful. That's a really good point. Thank you. All right, and then let's introduce Kudrat, if you want to unmute and introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Kudrat Alimi, and I'm a senior studying computer science with a certificate in game design. And what fuels my passion to study science actually started in high school. I didn't have that much exposure to science growing up. I grew up in a low-income community, so we had like a lack of resources. But thankfully, this program, we decided to pilot this coding program that taught like foundations of JavaScript and building websites, which was like very new and exciting to me. We participated in like a bunch of these hackathons, which are like opportunities for us to like pitch an idea and like code for like change. They gave us like a problem, we'd give a solution, and we lost all of them, which was frustrating, but it kind of just like emphasized to me that I enjoyed creating things, and I enjoyed just like coding for fun and just like coming up with like possible solutions, trial and error. Just like the thought of creating something for science was exciting for me. And it's because of like the lack of resources and just like the lack of role models that I could look up to and people that I could learn from, that kind of just pushes me to continue studying computer science. It's not an easy major at all. It's very tough. It's like gruesome. It's a lot of things, but I see like the potential for it. I see my potential for it, and I see like that I enjoy doing it either way. And that's just something that I want to like encourage people, young folk, to continue to do. Just continue to like do science that excites you, even if it's tough, it's hard. Like it's gonna be something. But just continue to do what you like to do. So yeah.
Thank you, all of you, for sharing those moments of when you knew you were a scientist. For me, I'll never forget my dad's lawnmower broke. And I was playing with my Barbies, and I just tossed those aside, and I picked up a socket wrench, and I was like, all right, in my pigtails at 4 years old, I was going to fix that lawnmower. And I had no idea what I was doing, but I was going to take it apart and rebuild it. So, and my dad did it with me. So that was kind of when I knew I was more interested in how things work than other things. I was just wanted to learn more. So we do have questions from the audience already, and we do have a set of questions that we wanted you guys to address during this panel as well. So I think I'll go between them. And at this time, when I ask the question, any of you can reply and unmute yourself and add to it. And if someone else, again, wants to add even more or their own opinion or their own story behind it, we'd love to hear from you. So feel free to do that. So the first question I kind of want to ask is, because we did talk about when we became a scientist and why. We did talk a little bit about the motivation. I think that'll come out in other questions. So I think I would like to hear a little bit about the impactful points specifically in your education for science. And what I mean by that is there are definitely constructive areas that helped you pursue and helped you get to where you want to be and continue to get there. But then there are also barriers. And so to improve the system, we have to hear about the barriers, but we also have to hear about what worked. Like, we want to know and duplicate and replicate everything that we can that was successful. So if any of you want to add to that, that would be great.
I can start us off. I mean, something that Jasmine had mentioned earlier was mentorship. And there's just a lot of literature and research done that shows and proves that like proper mentorships makes a big difference in students of color and their experiences and their confidence and self-efficacy in being scientists. So I think that's one of the big ones that for me helped me become a scientist. So tapping into that. And also what Buki said about the like social atmosphere, that is one of the big barriers I would say that is present now. The hostility, those microaggressions that we experienced, comments that maybe the other person wasn't aware of that was inappropriate, things like that, being mistaken for not being a student, those kinds of experiences are huge barriers and maybe even further make you believe that you shouldn't be allowed in those spaces. Being the only woman sometimes in groups, being the only student of color in groups, it all further like enforces those thoughts of, why am I here? So those are some things that stick out to me.
I would have to agree with a lot of what Alex said. I think one of the kind of steps, I guess I'll start with one of the destructive things and then get to the constructive things is, being in classes and kind of them encouraging you to break off into groups. And, oftentimes based on what you look like, people kind of make prejudging like what you might be able to offer to the conversation or to the group project and things like that. Certainly makes you feel, out of place. And whether you want to kind of continue pursuing this, knowing that as you continue on in the higher level, it will get harder and more isolating and things like that. But I think as far as constructive, and I guess I'll also add, depending on what school you came from, a lot of students are coming in with a whole bunch of AP credits or, IB credits or advanced standing. And so, depending on what you come in with, your course schedule looks a little different. And so a lot of times kind of working overtime just to kind of either graduate in the same number of years or just kind of get to the level that you need to be. And then as far as constructive things that have certainly helped, a lot of women on this panel have already mentioned mentorship. So I personally am a recipient of the Mercille J. Lee Scholars Program, and one of the important aspects of the program is mentorship. And so once I identified that I was interested in STEM, they paired me with a woman of color, a Black doctor. So, you can see where you want to be and know more about what it's going to take to get there. And they can also certainly, encourage you, but also, correct you when you need to be corrected. And certainly, hearing that from someone that looks like you certainly makes a difference.
I think as an engineer, there have been a lot of microaggressions, going back to what Alex was saying. Specifically, one time I was in the team lab in the engineering building, and I was checking out some drills and stuff for woodworking, and one of the technicians that worked there was like, oh, like, do you know how to use a drill? And like basically thinking because I'm just a woman, I wouldn't have been able to understand how to use a drill. And I think what really, I was taken aback by it. I was not expecting that. I'm like, bro, I have a red pass. Of course I know how to use a drill. Like, I got this far. But I think what made me feel a lot more comfortable in where I was and made me feel like I do belong was that my professor actually turned around and was kind of like, bro, like, no, of course she knows how to use a drill. She's in my engineering class. And I think coming from a white male, that made me feel a lot better too. It just made me feel like he saw what was happening and was aware of it and was able to step up and try and shut that down right away. So yeah, that was impactful to me. It kind of is that shutting down of those microaggressions the minute you see them and not just letting them slide by. Because oftentimes some professors feel like, I don't know what to do. Like some kid said something else in discussion and you don't know how to respond to that. But knowing that saying something is better than not saying anything at all is definitely something that helps those that are minorities and isolated like settings. It just makes us feel like much better and that we belong there.
Thank you.
And that's,
Go ahead, Bucky. Nope.
Okay. Just some constructive spaces were the student orgs. I was heavy in NSBE as an undergrad, National Society of Black Engineers. I also did SWE, Society of Women Engineers, IEEE. It was encouraging to be in these kind of professional kind of organizations with my peers. I learned a lot as an undergrad that carried me over into graduate school. Did a little bit while I was here at UW in the engineering. When I switched over to education, started doing more education stuff. But those spaces were so crucial for me as a Black woman in engineering, being able to, and then just not at the local level, but at the regional level of our organizations and at the national level, the student orgs that exist. So having those around are so influential.
Thank you. I agree. And hearing what you say about mentors being the key, I agree. I think someone who's your advocate and knows that you can do stuff even maybe when you don't believe in yourself is very important. I would like to push on that a little bit because we do have some questions in the chat that allude to this too. We say mentors are really important, but what about mentoring specifically, like what you said, Angelica, about having your white PI stand up for you about the drill? Like that is a prime example of how a mentor was there for you and helped you through that instance. So you didn't always have to be the one to defend it and shut down the bias. What other characteristics or aspects of mentoring do you feel, especially for women of color, that were beneficial to you?
I think one thing my mentors that are not necessarily women of color, but still women in STEM, they really reflect upon cultural humility and rather taking into account that I don't like the terminology cultural competence for a reason because it sounds like something that you just achieve and you are done achieving. But rather thinking of it as cultural humility, that we all have cultures that we don't necessarily know about. We all see ethnicities that we don't necessarily know much about, but really showing interest and I want to learn more rather than like in the past, not from these mentors, I've received comments from other fellow students or whatnot that you don't look like a Muslim, you don't look like a Pakistani, but it's those shutting down those microaggressions, as Angelica said, and saying, well, she doesn't have to look a certain way. Like I don't have to be wearing a hijab in order to look like a Muslim. I have my own cultural practices and maybe I don't feel comfortable with that. But really for mentors, practicing cultural humility and making a cultural humility plan if you want. Doing something once a week that you do in order to advance what you know about a different culture or a different background, or talking to someone with that. in mind. I think that's really progressive way to help other women of color in the STEM field.
I'd say when looking at mentoring, I think a big thing you can get with a bad relationship you can get between your mentee and your mentor is having the mentor looking like some giant emblem of perfection standing in front of you, and having the mentee be like, well, I'm glad they're my mentor, but I'm never going to get there. Like, they're just going to tell me about all the great things they've done in their life, and that's going to be it. And I think an aspect, and I'd say the most important aspect in forming a proper mentee-mentor relationship is being able to break that down and showing them that you are on this great path, but this is how you got there, and forming that connection that you are a person too, and that you started off like them, and just not allowing that ideology to foster, because it can be very detrimental seeing someone so great in them and not letting that mentee, I'm getting confused, but like not letting that mentee think that you're bigger than what you are, because you can be amazing, but having that connection and showing them, this is how I got here, this is how you can get there as well, and making sure that you're able to build up your mentee so that they can also be that level of greatness, and just not getting scared and not having to feel like they're small, because they're not, and no one's small and no one's big either. It's just like the different ways, and I think that's one of the most important parts.
Oh, that's a really good point. And I think that also goes beyond mentorship too, with the connection you have with professors as well, because there's always that power differential, but we're all humans. So making sure that we don't create this person on a pedestal that's very unobtainable, because then that goal isn't obtainable for ourselves. And so I really respect that that comment, and just being human and realizing that, you know, we all still have to eat lunch, we also have to do laundry, so we're all still human, even though maybe they're successful, they've also had failures, and they also have to do basic things like go grocery shopping like we do. And so having that connectiveness is really important. Thank you for that. I would like to allude, because we do not have, we know in UW-Madison we would like to increase our underrepresented numbers. But until we get there, and like you talked about Bucky talked about creating safe spaces along that line, and some of the questions that we're getting from the audience, I'd like to hear about, okay, so we talked about how to be better mentors. I think the other thing is to be really personable. Like, mentoring one student of color is not going to be the same mentoring another student of color. So learning the individual and being engaged at that individual level. But then my other question would be then about the environmental space. So what I mean by that is, when you did feel like you were the only woman of color in the room, because we've all been there, unfortunately, what did you do to overcome that? Like, how did you tackle that isolation? Because you're still here, right? You are successful. You did overcome that. You've overcome all of these uncomfortable scenarios or these feedback loops that we have created that make us feel like we're not supposed to be here. So in those moments, and until we can, sorry, my dog just shook his head, until we figure out, or until we get to that point where we have a large cohort and everybody is represented, how can we create safe spaces where everybody feels welcome? Yeah, that's what I would like to hear.
I think that for like the university to create these welcoming spaces, I think training on like inclusivity is really essential and important. Just like emphasizing the importance of just having spaces that are respectful of different perspectives and values of all students is essential. Going beyond a diversity statement, I feel like, is really important to me. Emphasizing to all students that in order to like just create like this awesome like product or solution, it's inherited that we like approach it at all different like facets that incorporate these different like experiences that all types of people bring into. I think would be a great way to just like show students that, hey, like diversity matters because with all these different types of people, all these different types of perspectives and opinions, we can create this like amazing solution to like approach this problem. I feel like just like handling it that way isn't really alienating people of color, in my opinion, but just like, I don't know, perspective changing, perspective taking, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to come up from up above. Like we talk about the three-legged stool of teaching, service, and research. And there's definitely a bigger emphasis on research at this university. And not just talking about how all of those are important, but actually putting words into action and showing how important that service is and that DEI work is. And I've noticed from conversations from other students of color that it's the students doing the majority of the work. They're putting the time, they're putting in the money and the effort, the emotional effort. But what are the faculty doing? What are the higher levels doing to sustain those efforts? And that's really where it should be coming from, is that the students are doing the work, but they need to feel supported so that this can keep happening and so that we can increase those numbers. So I think a lot of that has to come from the higher up and essentially reshifting the culture of the university to emphasize that and put a priority into that. So I think that's kind of where a lot of the change is going to have to come from, and not just telling faculty like, maybe you should take this diversity training. Like, no, it is really important. It's not just the TAs who should be taking it. It should be the faculty who are working with hundreds of students who should be taking those trainings. So, yeah.
And I'll co-sign with what Alex just said. There are so many faculty and staff members. I also work full-time for the People program here on campus, so I'm privileged to have been in the behind-the-scenes space of knowing what it's like to work. We have things like Leadership Institute. We have faculty members who are doing things that are geared towards educating faculty on how to work with diverse students, particularly in STEM. Dr. Angela Byers-Winston does a lot of stuff with mentoring, and there are there's so many I can't come up to, but there's things that are happening on this campus that are focused to faculty and staff, and until departments are making this a priority that their faculty and staff do this, we'll continue to kind of have students doing the hard work and then students being penalized for doing that work because they're trying to make safe spaces for themselves on this campus. That has always been the heartbreaking, especially in STEM. They're quick to tell the students, you have to stop doing this stuff that is working, that is making them feel mentally prepared and mentally better. Don't tutor, don't do the service, don't do back, focus on your studies. When in actuality, it's the other stuff that they're doing that is allowing them to stay in their department, to stay in their major, to stay engaged, because they're seeking affirmation, they're seeking things outside of the spaces because they're not getting it in their classrooms, they're not getting it in their advisors' offices, they're not getting it anywhere in the department. They have to go outside. So until department chairs, until schools and colleges say this is what we need to do to their faculty and staff, we're going to keep talking in circles. And it's still going to continue to be on the student, which it shouldn't be, on the grad student, on the undergrad. Faculty and staff have to step up. The resources are here. We have plenty of faculty that are doing that work, plenty of staff doing that work. We don't even have to go outside of campus. Let's start using that and utilizing that.
I agree with that completely. Thank you, Buki, for that. I think also so as students, we often are creating these social safe spaces for us, these both physical spaces, group chats in this online environment, filled with people that we are comfortable with. But we need academic spaces as well, both physical spaces, places where we can have these conversations. So this diversity forum is a great way to get this started, but I think if we can continue to have these conversations. When it comes to training, a training isn't over, a diversity training isn't over when the session is done. I'm really recognizing that, and that you are going to continue working towards knowing how to understand other people's perspectives. I know I struggle with that as well. I think I am still recognizing, I check my own privilege. I am privileged because I am educated. Other individuals do not hold that privilege, and I am very thankful for the opportunities that I've had, but also others checking their privilege. What are some components some identities that you hold that are privileged versus that might seem inferior, and if through the past, and recognizing, one, racism is a public health issue, and it still exists. It exists, and we see it all the time as women of color. And also, like for I know we Native populations, colonialism isn't an ended process. Really recognizing that these are still continuing today, and they're not processes that have ended.
Yeah, there needs to be more discussions on intersectionality, right? Those different identities that you have and how they work with each other to make your identity. And that's another thing, is that a lot of times I've been asked questions to essentially speak for the whole Hispanic populations. And I just get thrown aback by it, because I'm like, no, I'm not from that country, actually, by the way. And also I can't speak for everyone. And so having those discussions of what intersectionality is and different identities and how they work together is going to be really important moving forward. And also going back to that other point, there's just a lot of data and literature that shows already how people leave STEM programs, students of color leave STEM programs because there is a negative relationship between diversity work and their academic performance. And the students are getting paid, there's that emotional burden. And so it's something that they're passionate about, something that we're all passionate about, but it's actually hurting us academically because there isn't that emphasis by our advisors and faculty and departments and so on. So reading into that literature and showing proof that people are leaving because of this, that's another aspect. So we wonder, why are the numbers so low? Well, there are people going in, but how many people are coming out?
Thank you for that honest feedback. I appreciate your willingness to say your own personal experiences here as a way for others to relate and become better allies and become better PIs. I completely agree with how you say it takes everybody to take this training. And I don't know, like training, you used to think like, oh, I got safety trained, I checked that box. But diversity doesn't work like that, right? Like we said earlier, it's dynamic, it changes. Everybody's an individual. And so the intersectionality, like you said, like personally, for me, I grew up in a white family, so I grew up very Irish traditions and German traditions. And I ran for Miss Lacrosse Oktoberfest one year, and my onstage question was, clearly you're not German in descent. How would you be able to share this culture? And I was young at that time, so I couldn't even like really understand what they meant. I'm like, of course I'm German. I've been to Oktoberfest every year. Like my family is all German. And so, sometimes I think the perspective that we understand it as well as other people do is also confusing, because we're not in the majority either. And so that disconnect is really confusing too. So I really appreciate you guys breaking that down and explaining it more and more. We use the term safe space a lot, and there's a lot of questions in the chat. Could you explain to me what you would define as key parts for women in color for a safe space? And there were other questions like, how can I make sure that a student of color feels comfortable in my office, a PI is asking, and I still think that's a safe space question. Or how do we create these actual safe spaces for women of color? And so I'd like to hear I know the environment was part of it, but I think there's actual hard, like maybe if we set up rules, if we do certain things. So I'd like to hear what you have to say about that.
I think it starts off in a group setting. Oftentimes, you have to have that feeling of like, okay, here's a bunch of other Latinx, Black, other minorities, POCs in the room, and like you can see that you're not alone. And then if you're there for like a scholarship meeting, so for example, LEAD, which is the Leaders of Engineering and Excellence and Diversity on campus, they've done a good job of having these dinners for the scholars on like once a month, and they bring food, and immediately with food, I'm already like sold, right? You know, as a Hispanic though, that's very important to our culture. A lot of it is you have food for a lot of events. There's always a ton of it, and that just makes you feel more comfortable. I think a lot of other cultures can relate to this as well. And so having that group environment, having that feeling of like, okay, I'm here and I'm learning, maybe I'm learning about, you know, some sort of social topic that they've brought a speaker in from Milwaukee or from the Madison area. And that just like sets a tone for the group. And then therefore, when I go into an advisor's office, even if they don't identify the same as myself, I feel a lot safer because I see that they've recognized where I am and they've tried to make me feel comfortable, and then have gone the extent that when I walk into their office, I'm already feeling more comfortable. I feel more connected to them, and it just makes it for a safer space.
Yeah, I love thinking about, oh, do you want to go ahead? Well, I love thinking about the way to expand safe spaces. So as you're talking about how can I make sure someone feels safe in my office, like what Angelica said, being able to show your face show your support in spaces like that, like you support NSB, you support SHIP, you support LEAD, and all things like that. That's already going to make you a safer person that a person of color, a woman, can feel like they can go and talk to. And then continuing that, I think, is really important with your words and with your actions, and being able to listen and not be defensive. And if they say, oh, well, I had this adverse experience with this person, it's like, well, what'd you do wrong? Like, that's something I've gotten. And it's just been like, what do you mean, what did I do wrong? I feel I didn't do anything wrong. Or being able to take that further, and not only in your office, but then looking at a classroom setting, because I believe that I shouldn't have to go to a NSB meeting to feel like I'm in a safe space. I want to be able to feel safe in my classroom. And I think something that goes with that is a lot of the people, I'm a chemical engineer, a lot of the people in my major are from middle of somewhere, Wisconsin, and having to understand that all these people don't have the same experience as us. And I think training for everyone is a must, and truthfully. But if you can't train the students, or if we're not yet training the students, making sure the TAs and the professors having that training, but not only having that training, they need to be able to act upon that training. And if you're a professor, if you're a PI, if you're a TA, or if you're anyone in this audience, I think it's important to know what's going on in your classroom and not ignoring things that are happening in your classroom, and being able to say something when you see something truthfully. And if you don't think you have that ability as a TA, as a professor, you need to learn how to have that ability. You need to understand when something is not right. You cannot continue in the classroom when you're unable to say this. And I bring this up because my freshman year, I think this was the first time I experienced it was a macro aggression on campus, but it was my first time, poor little freshman me, in my physics lab. And also self-assembly, sorry. I think self-assembly in classrooms and just in things that are supposed to be safe spaces in general aren't the way to go, because as a person of color, as a black person of color, as a black woman, it's very hard for me to find these groups. And if I'm working on a group project, I don't want to be working by myself, or I don't want to be that person who's left alone because I'm unable to find a group because no one wants to work with me. I think self-assembly in the classroom is not great. Just a bit of advice there. But in this situation, my TA, I sat right in front of my TA's desk, and my partner needed to ask for my name to write it down. I told them my name was Jasmine, and they spelled it wrong. I'm like, oh no, it's a Z and a S. And they go, oh, how exotic. And I'm like, excuse me? And they're like, oh, I didn't mean it because you were black. Maybe I just meant it because you were a girl. And I'm sitting there, and my TA sitting there, and then there's laughter from not only my TA, but also from my partners. And that's a situation I didn't need to go through my first semester on this campus. And that's not to say if that happened to me, I know that's something that can happen to so many other people, because that's a situation where a TA, the person who was supposed to be making this space a safe space for me, completely failed to do so. And my question is, how can you foster a good learning environment when the person who was supposed to be there helping with that failed? And it's so important to check on your TAs, check on your professors, and make sure situations like that don't happen and to hold them accountable. So.
Thank you for sharing that. I would like to develop this idea a bit about what you said. I'm just going to dive into it. Let's talk about gaslighting a little bit, because what I have noticed in my own personal experiences on campus is when I tell someone, you know, that's not right. I actually don't like the term microaggression either. It's just a light racism. Just call it racism or prejudice. That's what it is. Like, we're not going to try to make us feel comfortable. We're going to use the right word to define the right action. So when you feel these prejudice or you feel this racism and you try to explain it to someone like a PI or a TA, you're already taking that step to train them, or at least to say, hey, I'm uncomfortable, I need help. And then they want you to prove it. Do you guys have that? Can you explain maybe those instances? It looks like Bucky has an example to maybe share. Because I think that that's really important to hear as well, that it's not your job to define what is racism. It's, you know, the system's job to be like, okay, you have stated that this is what this is. Now we'll take care of it and protect you. So I'd like to hear your thoughts about that.
I'm trying to formulate my thoughts on it's working behind the scenes, working more with students, learning the burden specifically at this university, because I never experienced this at Howard, and it's a totally different environment, I get it, but the burden on students to do the correct, it's too much, and it's not fair, because our counterparts are not doing that. Our classmates are not doing that. I can think of all the different times when something happens while in my grad classes, and I'm like, how in the heck are they able to do all of that? Meanwhile, I'm sitting over here stressed. And I don't know if faculty and staff truly understand that. There's an extra burden that is already being placed on students, and we're just talking about here on campus. We're not talking about what's going on in the global world, which is also affecting us a lot too. And people are privileged that they can go in with the blinders, and I can only focus on the things that are right in front of me, the work that I have, this research that I'm doing, and it's not fair. And I would love for faculty and staff to get that and understand that and move differently. And I'm always mind-boggled when students come and chit-chat with me and the things that they're saying they have to do in their classes. So this came up, and then I had to turn in and be the one that's going to educate everybody. And now I come out of the classroom and I'm drained. I'm like, that's not fair. That's not fair for an undergrad or a grad student to be going through that. They're not being paid to do that. They're paying you all to get this education and hoping that it is a safe space. So first and foremost, staff need to ask themselves, are they seeing what is happening in their classroom, in their departments? Are they looking at it with, to take a term from like The Wire, soft eyes, like being more empathetic to the situations that are in front of them? Are you trained to see those things? And then if you're not, then you need to get training. I don't know if we need to put it out like flat out there, like there's a lot of burden on students of color at this university, a lot of burden, especially in engineering, on women. Then on top of that too, all the different things that they're navigating mentally, and then they have to come in, look at this board and do these very mind-draining kind of work. Staff need to start recognizing that there's other things going on, and hopefully once they see that, get that, learn to be able to do that, they'll move differently. And until they do that, I don't know.
I think about my experiences in advising, whether regular academic advising or like career advising. And so I think one of the areas that has been like most challenging is, looking at like, kind of your application or your profile, and definitely comparing it to kind of other students that they've seen in the past. So I think one of the major things that I think about is, for pre-health, which is kind of the track that I'm interested in, do you have these clinical hours, these volunteering hours? Like, how are you getting involved in all of these different areas? And so certainly I know I keep going back to mentorship. A mentor had to tell me, like, you gotta kind of stop the tutoring or, some other community service that you do to reach back, which is something that as women of color, a lot of times we find ourselves doing. So reaching back, but also kind of reaching in. So we talked about our safe spaces. So a lot of us are, I was involved with AHANA MAPS, which is the Minority Pre-Health Society. So that's as far as reaching in to create that safe space among ourselves on campus, but also reaching back, because we know that there's people at home that don't see themselves in the place that we are now. And so I think of, all of that work and like really needing help kind of translating that work into the professional development or the volunteering or anything that will require us to be marketable in our next steps, or providing resources so we don't have to do all that work ourselves, and that we can focus on our studies and all of those other components that are traditionally needed for grad school or professional school and things like that. And then I think the other thing is, rather than kind of being shut down, like, oh, you don't have the grades or you don't have this experience, helping to shift the narrative, but also shift the perspective. Like, oh, you don't have this yet, but here are some resources that you might be able to use to get that. Or let me help you rewrite some of the things on your resume, because these are skills that are going to be helpful for you as an engineer or a doctor and things like that. Because I think one of the greatest pieces of advice I got is, put in the application, and let someone else tell you no. Don't say no to yourself first. And I think that can be really challenging, when I'm interacting with some teaching staff or, advising and things like that, when kind of someone else who honestly doesn't matter is telling you no, in that space, not necessarily the person on the admissions panel or the recruiter, but someone else who feels it is in their power to say that you aren't kind of fitting the mold.
I think there also needs to be more awareness of when students of color speak up, because there have been many times where, I offer an idea or something, but, this white person says it better and they get all the credit. And yeah, we're all nodding our heads because it's all happened numerous times, uncountable times. And that's another way where, people can check themselves of, actually Alex said that, or like, that's a great idea, Alex. Like, there's not enough of those, like, speaking up for great moments. Like, we need to be actively showing our support for each other by saying, thank you for offering that idea. I think that's amazing. Like, let's go with that or something. I don't think there's enough of that positive reinforcement, despite the great ideas that we have been sharing with each other. So I think that should be another component of speaking up.
I really like that. Something that personally I have been growing, and this might be obvious to other people, but personal growth happens. And I realize when I do surveys or get feedback, because of the demographic that I'm trying to serve, the survey probably doesn't do that, especially an anonymous survey, right? Because it might be then you go with the majority of it, but then the majority isn't the minority, and that's who you're trying to serve. And so I realized that my own personal ways of valuing and assessing myself or developing new programs, that doesn't work. And so I'm growing that way too. And I think that sometimes when you say that, we need to value that voice a little bit more, because it's not equally represented, unfortunately. And so I really appreciate that comment. There's an underlying tone to this panel, which is just more support all around. And that support looks like training. And that training should be something that you go to WIS.edu and you Google, because there's a ton of them available. And I think just as diverse as we are, our training should be diverse. I think we should have different types of people come in and do that training. I think we should, because nobody's perfect, right? Like, once you get trained, that person wasn't perfect who did the training, so now you're not perfect because you had that one training. Like, it doesn't work that way. I also think that what we're hearing is that we need to put a little bit more effort into what we say we value. And what I mean by that is hold people accountable. When they say, you know, I value diversity and I want to be an ally, okay, then let's like make it part of the tenure package. Let's make it part of the degree, because, you know, you're going to need that skill to go out into the workforce and to be a completely whole, well-rounded person. So I think that those pieces have shown up everywhere you guys have talked and are a continuous theme. And so I appreciate that. I would like you, there's a ton of questions in the chat that I'm trying to address. So I apologize as I'm reading and trying to listen and do all that. What would you say for your fellow women of color who are struggling because of, you know, current events, emotional impact, COVID? How do you stay, like, do you have any idea for balancing the emotional turmoil? And how, like, just navigating that? Because I know that right now we're not going to fix UW right today. And so until we can get there, what is something that you would like to say to women of color?
Something that for myself, I've been trying to normalize and just encourage is just taking time away to just step back and prioritize my own mental health. This year has been like really stressful for so many people, especially people of color, women of color. It's been demanding. Our shoulders are probably heavy from all the weight that we've had to carry this year. And it's important to have that communication with like professors, PIs, that, hey, this is a real life issue and it's impacting my work. I know my work's important, but like I'm even more important than like all of this work, because there will be no work if I'm not 100% myself. So that's something that I want to just emphasize for the women of color listening in. I don't know, it's so hard to say, but this world, I feel like we are one of the ones that have to go through the most and we have to experience the most, and we are going through it every day. Please take a step back, breathe, and take care of yourself mentally and physically. And we will all be here. Everything will still be here when you come back. Like, it's okay. That's what I would say.
I want to really emphasize that point because I think something that like I've been experiencing is, you know, health complications start to come up. And I think what she just said about, you know, the work will still be here is just so true, because, you know, it'll be here even if you're not to kind of bring it to that point. But just like, you know, you have to take a step back, and also knowing taking that step back might mean that when you come back, you're better than you were before. So, you know, taking that time, just that space to know that, you know, that not only that, but also training up people who can kind of carry on that torch. You know, it doesn't always have to be you, and you don't have to make it kind of a one-man, you know, team. And I think something that's also important to do. And also seeking out that support system, you know, and being willing to not respond. You know, I think a lot of times when a lot of those events happened in the summer, had a lot of people reaching out, you know, what do you think about this? Or can you tell me what's going on? You know, certainly a number of white counterparts. And it got to a point where some people just didn't feel like responding. And I had to do that because, you know, I also had my schoolwork and other responsibilities, but just knowing that you got to protect your peace and finding the best way to do that.
I'd like to point out, going with this question, I think if we're looking at the same question, it's what can PIs, advisors, and professors in general do to support these students who are going through this thing. And, you know, being a person of color is hard. Being a person of color in the middle of all these movements is hard. Being a person of color in the middle of all these movements in a world pandemic is harder. And it is difficult for us to continue with what we're supposed to pretend is our everyday life. But I think it's also harder when you don't have that support. So I think in the role of a PI, in the role of an advisor, in the role of professor, you have to be able to listen to your student, to your, I don't know what it's called, or your mentee or whatever it is, who's below you, and just listen to them and have them be able to come to you like, what do you need to succeed? What do you need to be better? Because for us, I don't know about you guys, but I will run myself until I'm exhausted, and it's not the greatest thing. So it is so nice and would be so refreshing to be able to have a professor address the students, to have my PI address me, to just say, what do you need to be successful? Like, how can I help you? I know you're going through a lot. Do you need anything from me? And doing that point of reaching out first and just like letting them know and being accommodating, because this is extremely unprecedented times, and even in these times, but also in general, like being able to let your students know, even if it's just a normal Tuesday, like if you need anything, I'm here to support you and I can help you be the best that you can be.
Can I add on to what Jasmine said quickly? And that was just also making sure that we're providing resources and support without an expectation of a return. So, you know, always, and I understand certainly some things it's because of funding reasons. You gotta like take a picture, or we gotta submit a survey, you know, or measure some difference, you know, because of the resource or support that was provided. But sometimes that also can make you feel tokenized, you know, and certainly here for a number, or really just not sincere or really compassionate support, but something that's just to kind of help support a program or some other type of measure. So I just wanted to add that in, that support's important, but also how it is given and whether it's genuine.
And also, it may not be you that helps that student, but it may be you that points them in the right direction. So that is, again, on staff and faculty on going outside of your department. Like I said, we're a huge university. There are departments dedicated to mental health resources. There are departments dedicated to finding support for students. Maybe there's housing insecurity or funding issues. So you as a staff member, as a faculty, as the advisor, need to expand your group, go beyond college engineering, go beyond CALS, and go beyond just faculty. There's a lot of academic staff. That's literally what we're here to do, what we're paid to do. We have these resources at the ready and would love for faculty and staff to use us more so that we can better assist all of the students. It just doesn't have to be on you, the advisor. And it shouldn't, you should want to say, okay, I can point you in this direction. It's not that I'm putting you off. It's just that I know I'm not equipped to handle it this way. I have been on this campus for a long time, and in that time, I've built a network that if somebody were to ask me something, if I know I know that I can say, hey, and many people will attest to, yep, if I email Bookie, she'll be able to say, can you look at this student? Or people email me, I have this question about this. And that's what we should be doing. That's what we should have at this university. It shouldn't be that you're totally at a loss if a student comes to you with a question beyond your purview. You should have a network on this campus that is going to help them, point them in the direction that they need to go in. And don't be upset that if it's not you that saved. First, it shouldn't be a savior type of thing. You're helping the student. If they don't come back and recognize, it's okay. You did what you were supposed to do, and that's it.
Absolutely. Those are really good points about more empathy from professors, PIs, teaching staff, and whatnot, and checking in with these students, because sometimes due to our own visions of ourselves that we have come to throughout our lives, sometimes all people of color don't know how to ask for help, don't know necessarily the resources that we can be, that are available to us. And I know I specifically, I undermine myself. Just like anyone, we have insecurities and we don't know necessarily how to reach out. And another thing, as a budding public health practitioner, I like to say, ask why. Ask why 5 times. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? Go to the root of the cause to work towards upstream issues. So go upstream to work towards these issues. And don't look at just what the downstream issues are occurring. Look at the structures that are in place rather than just resolving one issue.
Oh, fix the system, not the issue. Fix the system. I agree with that 100%, and I appreciate that. We're running out of time very fast here, and you guys are amazing, and I could keep going on for forever. like I could go off on the savior idea because I do see that a lot. And I don't think it's intentional, but it does not work. And so we could talk about that at a different time. But I would like to end on a note of hope and of grace and of the idea that it doesn't have to be this way. We can fix it, and we are fixing it, and it will happen. And to do that, I would like you to all give one, and we have to do it quickly, one aspect in your career, hopefully at UW-Madison, that was that 30-second, like, aha moment where I belong here, and this person or this event just made me feel that way. And so I'd like to hear, I know that that's putting you on the spot, so it might take you a few seconds to think of that moment. But I think that hearing that moment might give other people the opportunity to give that moment to someone else. And I would love for you guys to share that. So if someone's ready, we can do that.
Yeah, I have this moment picked out easily. As a chemical engineering, you need a 3.5 GPA to progress into the major, or else they can just tell you, hey, sorry, yeah, you can't do this anymore. And, you know, I was approaching the end of my freshman year, and I did not have that GPA, and I was frantic. So I was just going around talking to people, talking to professors, like, I need a new major. I want to do pharmaceuticals. Like, what can you help me? How can I get there? And I just had all these professors being like, yeah, this would kind of work for you, but or this, yeah, I guess you could do this major. You probably won't get to pharmaceuticals though. And I was just feeling so hopeless and so desolate until I talked to one professor, and I will name her by name. Her name is Suzanne Babcock. She is the department chair for material science and engineering. And I went to talk to her because I was like, you know, maybe material science is for me. And she basically, I was sitting there in her office, and she's like, Jasmine, you are a chemical engineer. Like, you can do this. Majors are not everything. You can write a great, GPAs on everything. You can write a great letter. Do not give up hope. And I left her office just feeling so much better. Like, you know what? I can do this. I want to be a chemical engineer. So I will be a chemical engineer. And sitting here as a senior, as a chemical engineer, I have her to thank like 3,000%.
I'll go really quickly. One of my first was the first time I was given responsibility in kind of showing my knowledge about the stuff that I have done. As a grad student who has been taking a very circuitous route to my PhD, I've been very, what do I want to say? Shy that I have not completed in the time that I wanted to complete in, and discounting a lot of the work that I've done to get to where I am now. The first time a faculty member was like, can you come and talk to my class of undergrads about ... because I know you've done ... And I had been on this campus for a while at that time. I said, this is the first time I've talked to a class on this campus. I'm in a PhD for curriculum and instruction. I've taught outside of this campus, but on this campus to go in, and I was kind of seen as the expert. It was another Black woman who said, I want you to come into my class because I recognize and see the work that you have done, and it is stuff that other people need to know. And that mentorship, they come in many roles, they come in many forms, but seeing in me something that I was very nervous or didn't see in myself, and acknowledging, no, you deserve to be here, you have the knowledge, you have the capacity, and I'm going to show you, and I'm going to put you in a position to do so. That was it.
I had a similar experience to Jasmine as far as, not having the GPA to get into a certain program that I was interested in. So I'm very much interested in going into medical school, and I wanted to apply to one of the programs that UW-SMPH has. It's called the Rush Scholars Program. And so the application traditionally due in January. I didn't feel like I had the GPA or other requirements for it. But my advisor for HANA, her name is Beverly Hutcherson. She has always been kind of telling me, put in an application, like I said before. So I missed the first deadline, then they extended it. And then I missed the second deadline, and they extended it again. And so I'm like, well, maybe I should go ahead and apply. And so my mentor, Dr. Tyler, wrote me a letter, and I put all the things together, not expecting to get in, remember, because I don't meet the requirements on the page. But then I was accepted. And so certainly learning more about how, the medical school here, would welcome me, and how there's so many people interested in helping me meet my goals, and recognizing what I have on paper really means something, I think really was a turning point in knowing that I can work towards those things. So really some great women here that kind of can see you personally, but also, as Bunky said, believe in you when you don't believe in yourself, so that you know that you belong here and you really can succeed no matter what. And I also want to say that I appreciate this panel because, and that's something that Dr. Bates said initially, we're just sharing our experiences. We're not here to sugarcoat or kind of just put on a show and all the great things. We're talking about, we know all the opportunities we have here, but we're able to share our experiences in the hopes of making it better. And so I think this format, I'm really appreciative of.
I can go next. I started off similarly. I didn't necessarily know, I knew I wanted to go into something health oriented, and was really interested in biology specifically, but wasn't sure of smaller communities that were available to me because I was overwhelmed by the university, the size of the university, not necessarily knowing how I belonged on this campus, not knowing places that I could go. There were obviously multicultural communities, but how do I fit in academically? How do I fit into this community academically? And a big role that of one specific community, BioCore, really helped me feel like I belonged as a scientist. My mentors within the program, Dr. Janet Batsley and Dr. Michelle Harris, were amazing in facilitating my learning, helping me grow as a researcher, and really encouraging me to work towards both health equity, and they listened to my opinions regarding cultural humility, diversity, and inclusion, and having individuals that listened on campus to my opinions as well, and they gave me job roles that encompass those responsibilities to work towards that within our own specific program. So I just want to give a thank you to them, and also to all of the individuals that I came across during my time at the university that really did help me. And I really enjoyed this diversity forum as well as a space to speak honestly about these experiences.
For me, I would say it wasn't one exact moment that made me feel like I belonged at this university. It was just more a gradual continuation of visiting one place over and over again. So the Diversity Affairs Office, many people would know that I literally sat in the back room. Jasmine would even be there with me. We'd have 20 people piled around a table, which I don't know how that'll ever happen again. But I would go there for lunch. I'd be there until 1 a.m. working on homework, and I would just be there with a bunch of other people, and I'd walk through the office and I'd say hi to all the advisors, and sometimes they'd even have baked goods there if it was a holiday or someone's birthday. It was just a happy family, and I think that's what made me really feel like I belonged here, is because I walked in and someone would immediately scream my name, and then someone else would walk in and everyone else would scream their name. It's just that feeling of you're the celebrity walking in. And you just feel so special in that moment. And you can complain about a certain class, you can celebrate your things there, and it just makes you feel so empowered to have that space. So for me, it was just sophomore year really utilizing the Diversity Affairs Office on campus and just being this is my home. And yes, people would find me there at literally any hour of the day.
I would say my advisor, Karen Schloss of the psychology department, she's really welcomed me in a way such as she encourages me to pretty much have a handle on my own research. So I didn't really know what to do with computer science and my other interests. I didn't really know how to intertwine anything. I was I'm interested in so many things, and she was like, that's great. We're going to explore everything that you're interested in and try to figure out what you want to do with it. So right now I'm doing this awesome project on how video games can elicit empathy within players around mental health, because that's really important to me. And she's given me such a liberty with this project to just like explore everything that I'm interested in. And she's also learning with me, which is the best and greatest thing too. So just having like that vulnerability and that same excitement, she matches my energy. It just makes me feel welcome in the space and feel like a scientist. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I mentioned previously that I didn't feel like a scientist until like literally this summer, and it's because I didn't go into geology until my junior year of undergrad. So that's pretty late in the game there. So I felt like I kind of got into grad school because I had a great undergrad advisor who mentored me and gave me those opportunities. But looking back on it, like I capitalized those moments, right? She provided them for me, but I did what I did with it. And I got my master's, and my master's advisor was the one who would always make comments to me about like the amazing work I'm doing and how I'm changing the department and all these, like, you know, the praise essentially. And hearing that, and then now having that confidence to be like, yeah, I did all of that. And he helped me, and Aradna, my undergrad advisor, like both of them together helped me see my potential and my abilities, and that I am a scientist. And yeah, like it's just crazy to feel that sometimes. Like, yeah, I'm doing all this stuff. Like, I actually know things, and I'm really good at it. So yeah, having those moments all the time with them has been what's made me feel like I'm meant to be here.
Thank you. That was amazing. And you guys are all very unique and just an asset to the university. Even if you don't get told that enough, or if you don't feel it, you genuinely are an asset. And embracing diversity is exactly what we're doing right here, right now. Just getting caught up in the excitement of it and the beauty of it is amazing. And so I want to thank you all for being here and for being willing to open up about yourself and your experiences so that we can do better and be better. So thank you. And thank you to everyone who attended. And thank you to Cheryl and Susanna for giving me the opportunity to be a moderator. This was an amazing event. So thank you all.